Hey, this is Kay with 7 Questions Sunday, and today we're going to discuss the 7 most important questions to ask an agency or a recruiter.
What is the company's history?
So why is that important? You know, there's a lot of new companies out there. I bet you every month there's 2 or 3 new staffing companies in the United States that form. A good way to keep track of them is through the JCO, the Joint Commission, through their healthcare staffing services. You can keep up with the new companies in there. And there are some good new companies that are formed, usually by nurses or people that have been in the industry that have a better plan. Because there's always something to improve in healthcare staffing. But the 2 things that I want to know is how many years have they been in business, and have they won any industry awards? There's some great new companies out there, but personally, especially for my newbies, I want a company that's been around the block a while. You know, my recruiters that we have in the Travel Nursing Newbies group, they have to have at least 5 years experience, and I would prefer companies that have 5 years experience. At least their CEO and their nurse staff, their nursing management staff, need to have a good, solid background in the staffing industry. So have they won any awards? Well, there's several top 10s now. There's the Highway Hypodermics, there's Gypsy Nurse. Blue Pipes kind of puts all of that together, and in fact, this last time they used some Indeed and Google reviews also. So Blue Pipes is really the one that puts it all together, and that's great. Highway Hypodermics, which is my website, my company, we also have our own top 10, and we actually had the original top 10. And why is that good? Well, because those are the companies that are best with their benefits and with their nurse evaluations.
What is the recruiter's history?
So with the recruiters, it's about the same thing. I prefer to have my newbies with a recruiter that has at least 5 years experience. That way that you have a well-rounded base of how to help a newbie and how to take them by the hand and lead them through. You know, recruiting is kind of like nursing. You learn by experience because there's new stuff that happens every day. So I feel like after 5 years, you really got a good grasp on how to help newbies the most. But I want to also know, you know, how many years of experience do they, if they have only 1 or 2, but maybe their wife is a nurse. I know a couple of recruiters like that, and I would take them also. You know, I wouldn't mind working for them. But it's just good to know how much experience your recruiter has, and most importantly, whether they have a medical background. I tell you, working with a nurse recruiter who has previously been a nurse, even a CNA or an LPN, it doesn't have to be an RN. If they have some kind of nursing or therapy background, they're going to be a lot easier to work with because they understand more, which is good for newbies. Not saying that if you don't have that experience that you're not a good recruiter, but I'm just saying that, you know, that one that has the experience knows what it's like to be on both sides. And do they have any nurses that you can talk to? I know Facebook groups are really good at referring nurses to great recruiters. So this is the one thing that you can ask the recruiter. Do you have a nurse that I can talk to that's maybe in the same group that you are? You know, say, hey, yeah, Kay's one of my travelers. You know, you're more than welcome to talk to her. I'll let her know. So that's another good thing to ask a recruiter whenever you're first interviewing them.
What about their insurance?
A lot of companies will use United Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or Aetna is another one that a lot of companies will use. but each one has its different perks. So, find out which one they have. Also be aware that your insurance, like whenever I travel with my company, they're out of Omaha, Nebraska. So like my Blue Cross Blue Shield will be Nebraska whenever I'm on assignment. And that does make a difference between Blue Cross Blue Shield in Nebraska is different than Idaho and just what they're covering you for. When does the insurance start? Some insurances start the beginning of the month. Some insurances start on your first day. Some of them don't start until 30 days after you start. So be sure that you know when the insurance starts. And what's the cost? What's the cost for a traveler, or what's the cost for a family? That's a really big benefit that you need to worry about if you need insurance, is that insurance cost.
Do they have a housing department?
This will be important to you if this is your first assignment and you want to have the company help you get your first housing. The nurses, we nurses, really prefer to have take the stipend and get our own housing. But for those first couple of contracts, you may want to go with their housing department. So what kind of housing do they have? Also, what kind of, if you're taking the stipend, will they help you find housing? Some of them have links with, I know Equity Apartments is one that used to work with travel companies all the time. Extended Stay American and Candlewood Suites, places like that. Some of the major motel chains will also work with the travelers and the company. So, and what about RV parks? Will your company help you find an RV park? It's always good if you're to look for your housing before you take an assignment. So you want to make sure that you know what you're going to have to do for your housing.
How is credentialing done?
And that's going to be your biggest headache. As soon as you sign that contract, you're going to get an email with about 40 gazillion things that you need to do. Do they have a credentialing specialist, or does the recruiter have to do the credentialing? If you're in a big enough place that they have a credentialing department, then credentialing usually goes by really, really quick and you can get your stuff done. If you have a recruiter that has a lot of travelers and they're responsible for the recruiting, sometimes they can get bogged down. So not saying that it's going to be a really big hassle, but yeah, sometimes it does happen. Not the recruiter's fault, it's just the timing fault. It's kind of like the ER or labor and delivery. It's usually feast or famine. So when they get a place a nurse, maybe they'll place 2 or 3 or 4 and have to work through all that credentialing and setting up appointments and all of that.
If I have a problem at night, who answers the phone?
This is a real big one for me because I've been a night nurse for 27 years. If I call in the middle of the night, who am I getting a hold of? Am I going to get a hold of a recruiter? Am I going to get a hold of a clinical liaison? Am I going to get a hold of my recruiter? Am I going to get a hold of somebody else's recruiter? My understanding that recruiters usually take turns taking after 5 o'clock call. So you may get your recruiter and probably you aren't going to get your recruiter. So then you have to be aware that another recruiter might answer that phone at night, and that recruiter may or may not know clinical stuff. Usually at night when I'm calling because of clinical stuff. A lot of it too is about floating and whether or not, can they float me to this floor or can they float me to a different hospital. So I would want to make sure that, who is going to answer that phone at night. I prefer to have your recruiter or a clinical liaison, but just make sure they all have to have somebody on at call night if they are Joint Commission certified. So, just be sure you know who's going to answer that phone.
What about pay?
And the biggest question is, what about pay? My first thing that I want to know is the offer that they're giving you, is that the best offer they can give you, or do you have some wiggle room there? Because, I'd like to do the salary comparison chart or maybe get a quote from another company and then go back to the company that you're wanting to travel with and to see if there's any adjustment. Then you want to find out how your timesheets are done. Are they electronic? Are they paper? Do you fax them in? Do you email them in? One word of caution is that some hospitals have their staffing department send in your time card, and that's great, but always make sure that you fax a copy or email a copy to your recruiter, so that way that you have a backup there. What is a week? Some of them go from Saturday to Friday. Most of them are Sunday through Saturdays. Make sure that you know how the weeks are set up. And what if something's wrong? Can they get that fixed today? Or are they going to have to get it fixed tomorrow? If it's wrong on a weekend, that's where it's going to get kind of tricky, because recruiters and management is only Monday through Friday. So the chances of you getting something done over the weekend is a little slimmer than getting it done during the week, but not impossible. To me, I want a company that is going to wire that to me even on a Saturday or a Sunday. And, make sure that they're able to wire you the money on any day of the week. So, all right, guys, that's all for this week. Bye now.